All right.
All right, we're rolling.
Rolling.
Episode
5?
oh,
5.
Cinco.
Look at us. Look at us. Who would've
Episode
thought?
5. I think we're rolling now.
That's right.
Episode 5 of the Entertainment Business Review. I'm Brian.
I'm Jordan. Welcome back.
Welcome. So,
Well, or for the first time.
most likely.
Most likely for the first time.
So, this past weekend, I saw the Dave Chapelle special, which I personally thought it was great.
Yeah.
I feel like recently he's been doing a lot more of that comedy where it's not just going out with like jokes. He's trying to like have like a conversation. He's trying to instigate something almost.
Yeah.
But I'm here for it. I think he does it in a smart way where when he like loops the topics full circle, you're like, oh wow, this guy's on a different level.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
he's the GOAT. Honestly, he is.
Yeah.
I think that's probably not even a debate at this point. Like, he absolutely is the GOAT.
Yeah, his ability to cause like a ripple in society.
Remember when
is
during COVID?
unbelievable.
Remember when in COVID he dropped that like 20-minute special on YouTube just like out of nowhere, and I was like,
Yeah.
like what?
Yeah.
And it was so awesome. Like it was funny, but it was very like
Yeah,
powerful.
the
too.
world
He's
stood-
becoming more of like almost like a funny preacher almost in a way. It's
Yeah.
interesting how he's evolved.
He has a good ability to call out things as they are that draws you to the ridiculousness of it, and then he satires it,
Yeah.
which is like, that's just genius level like comedy.
That's why we need satire, honestly. Satire is
Yeah.
just like so good for society.
Yeah, being able to
very
laugh at
healthy.
yourself.
Yeah, and it like just show because like I don't know, everybody's full of their own bullshit. So like when you
Yeah.
have satire and people calling you out on your bullshit, it usually like allows you to like laugh at yourself and like be like, yeah, that is pretty dumb. Honestly, when he makes fun of white people, like a lot of times I'm like, yeah. Like a lot of the time, like,
And he goes after
Yeah.
everyone. That's
Yeah.
in the same vein. There's been such a huge public reaction to the special.
So yeah, let me talk about the time. Let me introduce it, and I'll talk about
Yeah.
the time frame. Because there's a whole story behind this for those of you who aren't aware or haven't heard about it. I'm sure you've heard about it to a certain extent at this point, but
Yeah, it's pretty mainstream now, I think.
yeah, it's kind of blown up. So what happened was his special dropped last week, I think it was, like mid to early. I don't remember exactly when it was dropped.
Yeah.
But it was dropped last week, and it went like a few days, and it was fine. But as people started to watch it more and more, so I watched it, and I was like, that was hilarious. And I don't think it was his best, but that's just my personal opinion. I think
Yeah.
he said funnier, but like it was still very good.
It wasn't-
Dave Chappelle's always going to be like A++. It's just like whether it's A+++ or it's A+.
This is just a
Or like-
regular A.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, he didn't. It wasn't supposed to be one of those like laughing out loud ones. It's one of the ones in the middle where he's like trying to have a message with it, which is it's his way of doing things now.
I think he's changed that. I think that's become more of his thing now that I think he's reaching the end of his career.
Yeah.
And like COVID could probably I think shifted his like mindset a little bit as it did for like everybody pretty much. So
Yeah.
I don't blame him for that. So came out, like thought it was good. He's had a history of tackling a sensitive subject. A lot of sensitive subjects, but in particular is the transgender issue. He continues to hit on it almost stubbornly because he always gets pushback on his jokes from the trans community. And this time I think he really wanted to set the record straight. And he actually did say at the end of it, he was like, until I know you guys are laughing with me, I'm done with these type of jokes.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like his ultimatum joke until he can figure it out, I guess.
Yeah,
I
that's
thought
why
he
it's-
did, but I'm not transgender, so I can't.
That's why it's called the closer. He's like closing the loop on this arc
is
of
that
his jokes.
why?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
It goes deeper than that because
That's smart. I
the
like
previous
that.
couple specials, he started joking about it, and he realized that, people, you're in one of two camps. One where you're like, oh, he's just hilarious, he's just doing the same old thing, and the other camp that is just up in arms about it. And so he's kind of been playing that game with his other specials, and then now this is him closing the loop and basically saying like, look, if you can't laugh with me about it, like the other parts of society have when I've made fun of them, then I'm not going to make jokes anymore. So it's like he's done with that. And I think that was like,
I like that.
Yeah, and what he wanted to do in the special was highlight some of the issues, right? And he had that whole story that he told about one of his friends which is very tragic. And he was trying to call it out as a way to like say like, these are real issues. I'm joking about it, but I'm trying to raise awareness, and we're supposed to be a community to talk about these things together, right? And he's getting canceled for it.
Well, he's not going to get canceled. He's never going to get canceled because he's Dave Chapelle. So, like, or he's at the very least he's being attempted to cancel, which
he can only voluntarily get canceled, like what he did, and just left and didn't do anything for 10 years.
Yeah. Although let's preface this is like a lot of people are like, it's not cancel culture, it's accountability culture, which I mean, I think it depends on the circumstance. Sometimes it is like obviously like Harvey Weinstein or like Kevin Spacey, like. Yeah, that's accountability. Like, we need to get those dudes the fuck out.
Yeah.
But, like, then you have, like, an Aziz situation. Or, like, there are some situations that, like, get a little bit out of hand where it is actually, like, a little bit much. And I think this is the same thing with Dave. But, so
what was the public reaction?
So, the public reaction, I mean, most people, it's great. I think if you look at, actually, I'm going to look at the reviews.
RT?
The Rotten Tomatoes. Yeah, I'm looking at, like, I guarantee you there's going to be... a discrepancy. There's always a discrepancy with stuff like this between the audience.
Before you even look at it, let's try to take a guess. I think the audience score is going to be in the mid 90s.
I would say it's at least in the low to middle to mid 90s, and the critics is probably what do you think?
I think probably less than 60.
But
not drastically to like less than like 20. I don't think it's going to be like that.
I might be. I don't know.
Wow. Okay.
Because critics get super like SJW. Like if
they do. The Rotten Tomatoes one. They do.
And to be fair with critics, like if you don't kind of follow, like you could get canceled. You know. So sometimes I don't blame critics for being like, I don't even want to like.
Yeah.
I don't want to come off as like anti-transgender. I'm a freaking critic. Like, whatever, you know? I'm just going to go with the narrative because it's not worth risking my career for it.
Yeah.
So sometimes they do that.
Also, critics, like, from what I hear, it's not like they're not like being supported by like the studios or anything like that. They're just talking about movies. So so like their career is actually like pretty fragile when it to begin with. All right, so let's see. So I think
but there's going to be a huge discrepancy, I'm sure.
Yeah, 95 for the audience score, and I'm saying 60 for the critic score, and you're saying
I would say lower. I don't know exactly how low.
Okay, let's see.
But I would say lower.
The closer,
lower
Rotten
than 50.
Tomatoes. Oh, you're right on the money, man. So 96% audience score, 43% tomato meter.
So I love the discrepancy.
So it's rotten. It's rotten.
Love that. Dude, did you see the Fauci documentary?
Oh,
look up the Fauci documentary. Mom, we're not going to go with the Fauci and COVID because then we just get into politics. But look at the discrepancy. It's freaking hilarious between audience and critics. It's like the Disney Plus one that came out. I burst out laughing when I saw it.
Oh, wow.
It's like, what, like 98% critics love it?
91-2. This is insane. What's the point of this?
It's exactly, it's like whatever the narrative is, the critics are going to go.
That's absolutely absurd.
Anyways. So we'll get into, like, we don't need to get into politics, but I just thought that, like, you see a lot of movies like that where the discrepancy is insane. And it's usually because of stuff like that, where, like, audiences just enjoyed that something was funny, and there's a political element.
Yeah.
That like mess it up. Like,
well, anyways,
like
it's a 2 times difference, right? 43 tomato, 96 audience. So most people loved it. Yeah.
So yeah, of course, that's what the Dave Chapelle one. So so from an audience perspective, it's Dave Chapelle. Like it was great. Like it was very, very good. Like it's high level quality. And so like I think it was like 2 days later, the showrunner of Dear White People. So there's like 3 seasons on Netflix. I think they're going to do one more season and it's done. Okay. Been a relatively successful show for them. She is a transgender woman, and she basically went on Twitter and said, "I can't work for a company that would do something like this, that would allow not do something, but allow this content to be on their platform. And because of this, I am not going to, I'm not going to produce anything for Netflix." Wow. And she said, like, anything, like, in the future. She said, the people at Netflix have been really nice, but I she's talked to her reps at Netflix, and she's like, they've been nice about it. They're understanding. they're not. I don't think she talked to Ted Sarandos. She talked to like the people who are main contacts, and they're like, we can't do anything about it. And she's like, but like I can't work. I can't help provide content for a company that would do it. Yeah. Okay. And of course, like, some employees were obviously on her side, and obviously Variety and all the trades were just like, oh my goodness, what a queen. And then so she got like 500 interviews, and there was a lot of stuff on that. Became a big thing. Yeah, exactly. Really boosted up her popularity. That was the first time I discovered that the person who wrote Dear White People was a white person, which is interesting. Yeah. But even though I do like that show, I have watched the show and I actually really like it. So, but
well, it's to you. It's Dear Jordan.
Yeah, I learned a lot, I guess. So she came out with that, and then on Friday they had, I think what happened. There was a lot of internal stuff going on in the company, and so Ted basically set a meeting with like 500 of the top executives and said, like, let's do a Zoom call because I know you're going to have subordinates who are going to question this decision. They're going to be upset. I totally get it. So let me just tell you why we're making the decision we're making, so you can communicate that to your people, basically. And I think it was like three employees. One of them is a transgender, either woman or man. I actually don't know which one it is, but snuck into the meeting. Like they weren't invited to the meeting, but somehow got the link or something and went in. I don't know if they actually created like a ruckus or anything, or they just attended.
Oh, was it just a Zoom bomb?
Yeah, I think it was just a Zoom bomb.
So for some reason, I like when I read it, I thought it was like they kind of just like
walked into the meeting,
like an executive boardroom.
That's what I thought at first, but I read more and it seemed like it was just like a link.
Oh, okay.
So like not that big of a deal.
As dramatic as it could possibly get on a Zoom.
It wasn't like a Hollywood movie. Yeah, where they walked in and announced their presence. No, I'm pretty sure they just went to the meeting. I don't know if they actually said anything. I don't know if that's been clear, but it was enough that they were in the meeting. They might have disrupted it, or maybe they were just there, but they got suspended for it.
Okay.
So they did something enough, whether that's just being in the executive meeting uninvited or not. They were suspended, and of course, the media at first was like, "Is it because they resisted, your content?" Netflix. This was the first memo where Netflix was like, "No, we are suspending them because they attended the meeting that they were not supposed to go to, and
i.e. they broke a rule."
They broke a rule. Like we totally agree. Not only do we totally agree with, we don't agree with their perspective, but like we like fully support their right to push and like criticize what we post. Like we want employees to express that. Like Netflix has always been like a open culture. Like if you have a grievance with us, say it out loud. They actually fired 3 employees for like talking behind the back of one of their top marketing people. So they're very much like
spotlight things. Yeah.
Yeah. So like they're very much like, if you feel the way you feel, the worst is if you don't say it. Like we want you to say it. So they were like, no, like they're being suspended because they broke the rules. And that was Friday. And then earlier this week, it's just gotten. It just keeps growing, like a virus. And eventually now it's gotten to enough employees where I shouldn't say virus because anyway, it's just gotten to it's
the
just
momentum
grown.
For the movement has grown.
Right. Yeah. It's not necessarily bad. It's just a perspective that's grown in the company. And now it's reached a point where there's going to be a walkout. Like the employees are going to walk and I think it's trans people and allies are gonna not work and kind of picket signs at the front. And Netflix stood their ground. Ted sent out a memo to everybody that basically, and I agree with his opinion, which is or their opinion. I think it's the company's position, which is essentially, our job is to entertain people and provide a lot of different perspectives, like provide multiple different perspectives and a lot of diverse perspectives. And in an effort in that mission, we are always going to possibly offend people. Like that's just always what it's going to be the case. Whenever you have diverse content, you're never going to produce something that's going to please everybody all the time. It's impossible.
There's going to be problematic content regardless.
Right. And they listed out like there was cuties, there was something like there's content that we've done this for, and we have this position where we're willing to take these risks and risk offending people in the effort to create diverse content and entertain a huge huge set of people. And they said the only time we wouldn't is if it actually promoted violence toward other people, and or like it inspired bad behavior like violence. And they've said, and Ted said in his memo, he's like, this argument has been made with content for a long time. And one point he made was, content in movies and television have become increasingly violent, especially video games too, have gotten increasingly violent over the last 30 years, and criminal, like actual violence with guns, has gone down over 30 years. Right. So he's like, we don't believe there's a correlation between like content that's offensive and like that actually soliciting action to do something that would cause violence to somebody. Yeah. And if you watch the special, if you really watch in the context, there's no way anybody watches the Dave Chapelle thing is like
and feels compelled.
Screw the trans people. Nobody comes out of it like that.
Yeah, it makes me wonder whether they watched the whole thing through to the end, and two, did they understand like the message about the special?
It's tough, yeah,
because the message was one of like, we have to laugh together. It's more about togetherness, right. And if we can bring up these issues and talk about them, then that's ultimately better,
right?
That's what I got out of it.
I mean, he said a lot of things that I think a lot of people would be scared to say if they're in the fear of that they'd be canceled. And the reason why that's important, and one of them is like the example of like the fact that a rapper can kill somebody, but if they insult a gay person, then that's when their career is
that's
derailed. Murdering somebody is so like, it's saying these things that I think a lot of people think in the back of their heads, but they can't say because of cancel culture. And I think it's important that Dave is saying this, because at the end of the day, for people who think that they can't say this, they'll never evolve their thinking because they'll always think that way. So if Dave can say these things and it creates an actual conversation where something happens that's productive, it's good that he's bringing these subjects up, right? Like you want to talk, like that's the whole point of satire, is to bring out these things so you can think about it critically.
Right.
So
ultimately, at the end of the day, Netflix won. I mean, they had all this buzz around it. People are going to go out and watch it. People are going to hear about it in the news. And we were talking about this earlier. For sure, when they were developing it, someone somewhere, some exec or some development exec was like, you know what, if we publish this, there's going to be XYZ people who are going to be upset. There's going to be this many people in that group that are just going to be like very mad about this.
Right.
And they decided to go forward with it. So they made that decision.
Right.
Right. It's not like they weren't expecting this backlash. So yeah, I mean, they played it right.
Yeah.
If their goal is to get people to watch it, they did it.
And it's a slippery slope. Like that's why I appreciate them. It's very much like the social media issue, where like once you start censoring certain things, it just gets worse and worse.
Yeah.
To a point where if people think that they can like rebel against every piece of content that offends them, then eventually Netflix is like gonna have to cancel like half their library.
Yeah.
So you start on that slope, like it's just a downhill. It's downhill from there. So if they go out and say, which is what they have been, is like, we're gonna create content that might like upset you.
I mean, think about like what they would have to do. So
it's art.
They'd have to apply a consistent policy to that, right? So if they said, we're not going to do anything that suggests violence or, even like is funny with regards to trans people, then they're going to have to go through all their content and make sure that none of that is there.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Because then otherwise they'd just be targeting Dave Chapelle specifically, which they don't want to do because they have such a huge partnership with him.
Right. Massive partnership with him.
So like,
which financially, they like have to.
Yeah.
They have to defend him, but they also like I do like that Ted came out and said like this isn't. He hasn't mentioned the money thing at all, which is good. Like I think people are in the back of their heads like, oh, this is the money thing, but he's actually explaining it in a way that makes a lot of sense outside of the money perspective.
Yeah. It's hard to argue with Ted unless you're very emotionally like.
And that's
invested in this.
That's why I don't want to get like too into like whether the people who are resisting are in the right or not, because it's impossible for us to understand, to have complete empathy for a trans person because we haven't been through it. Like I'm sure it sucks, to be honest. Like being a trans person, I'm sure, is a really hard thing to go through in life.
Yeah.
So I can understand why they'd be sensitive about certain things because like, being in that situation as a person is really hard. Like they're really hard. And So I can at least appreciate that this is a difficult situation for them, but also at the same time, it's like if you just sat down and laughed at it and laughed at yourself, it takes away the evil power out of it too. Like kind of like the joke he makes, right? That Dave made, where it was like, what was it that the transgender woman that opened for him who sucked, right? And like that guy came over, said something like really like what said like, does the carpet match the drapes, or some like derogatory comment to her that was not in good taste, and she responded back with like a killer joke. Yeah, that's how you do it. Like that's how you counter it. How you do it. Yeah, right. You come out with a sick comment and make him just look like an asshole. Yeah, that's what you do. But when you protest it like this, now you're kind of the asshole. Yeah, and like you're just so it's almost hurting your movement in a way. Yeah. Like it's almost hurting your mood. But if you can laugh with them, then maybe it might normalize it might actually help your movement more. Yeah.
From my perspective, they achieved their goal of getting the views, the buzz, getting people to talk about the issues, right? So I do think it ultimately is probably going to be a good thing at the end of the day. Like as in, there's going to be much more good that comes out of this whole debacle than if they just didn't do it at all.
I also think this does set a good precedent for comedians, because comedians to Netflix. So like I think this actually does a really good in terms of a perception that Netflix has amongst comedians, because comedians are always worried about this. Yeah, like they're always. That's why a lot of them like, don't even do specials.
Yeah, they're telling them Netflix is a safe place for comedians.
Right. Netflix will use this and say, look, like we support our talent. Yeah. If you say something that like we believe in, or like, not that we even believe in, but that we think is okay and that we're willing to put onto the platform, we will defend you no matter what once it's on the platform. Now, if you say something in your set, we might ask that you cut it, and that's fine. But once it's on the platform, like you're in it and you've got the full backing of Netflix, I think that's huge from a comedian standpoint. Be like, I know you're going to have my back. Yeah. In a society where a lot of people, when they get canceled, like the company is just like,
throw them out.
They wash you away. They defame you. They're like, fuck that shit. We're not even going to be involved in this. Yeah. I think comedians are going to really vibe with that.
I think it's just funny. Like you and I have such a like kind of like a love-hate relationship with Netflix. We'll agree with them one day and then disagree with them on another day.
It's nuanced opinions, man.
That's true. It's very nuanced. Yeah. Anyways, let's move on. Enough talking about Netflix for today. Yeah. So the box office numbers over the weekend came out recently. Yes. Bond, which was this huge bet by MGM. Like they were supposed to have released it like early 2020.
I'll look it up. I'm
like a long time ago. Like it's been done for a really long ass time that they had to market it so many times.
I feel bad. Yeah, I remember seeing the trailer when it first was released.
And it was ages ago. It was pre-pandemic.
It was COVID. Yeah. No, I think the first one was during the pandemic.
Was it really?
I think so. Because I was like,
am I thinking of Top Gun? Maybe that Maverick.
You might be thinking of Top Gun.
Pre-pandemic.
Still, we're waiting.
Still hasn't come out.
So many movies we're waiting for. I don't remember exactly when the trailer was released, but I remember seeing at least one trailer. Yeah. During COVID.
That's hype, man. I remember seeing it. I was like, oh shit, I'm so down for this,
dude.
And then and then it came out. 50 million in the box office the first week, and it's doing like 300 globally. And the articles are saying its budget was like 300-ish, but in order to break even, this movie had to make 800 million in global box office. And part of that's probably because of the double marketing they had to do, but they're losing money on this movie, which is supposed to be the huge release for MGM. Like, you know how much they ride on their Bond properties? Like a lot. So this is not great. And like I think even Venom beat them out of the on the charts right now. So
they did.
Not good news.
No, it's pretty bad. It's
pretty bad. To be fair, I haven't seen it, so I'm going to hold judgment on the actual movie itself. Yeah. But it doesn't bode well.
I've heard it's not bad.
Well, the ratings are pretty good. Rotten Tomatoes gave it like an 83 or something. Yep. As far as Bond movies go, that's pretty good. It's pretty solid.
Right. But so the issue, it seems, is not necessarily that the movie itself is bad. It seems like people are a little bit less enthusiastic about Bond. Because it's not like people went. I mean, it's because it seems like people are going and they're relatively enjoying it. It's the fact that people aren't going in the first place. And initially, you could say, yeah, that's a COVID issue. But it's not really, because Shang-Chi and Venom...
People went out for movies.
When they went out for those movies.
You're right.
Now, the Wall Street Journal came out and talked about this. I think it was on Monday, about the slowdown. And they credited it to the fact that older audiences tend to see James Bond movies. More older audiences than Venom and Shang-Chi. So that could have contributed to it.
Yeah.
It could have contributed to it. Is it the main reason? I tend to not believe that to a certain extent.
Are younger audiences excited about a hyper-masculine, suave, spy, espionage movie?
Well, I think it could either be that question, or it could be, is James Bond even that anymore? Like, and I had to see the movie.
Yeah.
But like, there's
in your
also
mind,
been a lot.
Yeah. Sorry.
There's in culture, like culturally, is it appropriate to have a movie about a dude sleeping around using women to gain intelligence to fight?
Is that the same Bond that we know? Like, okay, so I was gonna say,
well,
like,
that is Bond.
In your mind, that's Pierce Brosnan Bond, and that's
every Bond. That's
true.
That's like the classic Bond
I'm saying
trope.
what we
That's why
remember.
Bond girl is like a common phrase.
What I remember is Pierce Brosnan, him being just like this suave British dude.
He's my James Bond.
Yeah, no. Yeah,
me
too.
Like
me too.
GoldenEye, the video game. Ugh, classic. But yeah, he's my Bond.
Yeah, and I just don't know if people are excited about that anymore.
About James Bond generally. What do you mean?
Just like the concept of it.
See, I don't know. I don't think. So I tend to think that Bond was probably more of it. It was appealing to men because every man wanted to be Bond. In the fact that he was this awesome spy,
nice cars,
kicked some ass,
yeah,
was rich, had like all these nice cars and stuff, and like just got with like the most beautiful women in the history like of the universe that you didn't even know existed until you saw them on screen. You're like, jeez,
yeah.
Women, I think, probably went because they probably thought Bond was super attractive, and they were attracted to that type of guy. I don't know if men and women's preferences like that have changed necessarily. Like, I think dudes do want that kind of role model that they want to look up to.
Yeah.
And I think women do like dudes who are not necessarily dudes who sleep around, but dudes who are polished, who are gentlemen, who like kick ass, who have all these gadgets, who are rich. I think women would be appealed to that still.
I guess what I'm saying is, like, I think deep down those haven't changed, but currently that's not what people are going to say is attractive about men, right? As in, they're not going to be like, oh, if some guy has like a great car and he dresses well, like that's just the attractive man. I think nowadays there's other definitions, and that's just taking away from like the traditional concept of like what a man should be like, what you should aspire to be as a man. I just think like it's out of vogue.
What do you mean?
I think it's overtly out of vogue.
What do you mean out of vogue?
As in like for example, like the big Arnold-esque guys, right? That's no longer desired, but before it was, right? And people would say that's problematic because that's like this concept of like a toxic masculine dude, right?
Right.
But
there's definitely an identity crisis in terms of like how men should be portrayed on screen now.
That's what I'm saying. Like,
yeah,
it's no longer that. I mean, I guess The Rock is like the one exception, right? But most of the guys that you're seeing now aren't going to be like that, right? So, I mean, that's just me speculating at the end of the day. But, I mean, it just didn't do well. I don't think it's going to break even. It's terrible news for MGM, and it's even more terrible news for Amazon.
Right. Yeah, no, I think that's pretty bad for Amazon because they're buying MGM, which James Bond is their primary, is the big one. I can go through like the list of IP. I don't
think they get Bond.
Yeah, they don't really get Bond fully because it's partially owned, or maybe even majority owned by the family that created Bond.
Right.
But there was an interesting article, and again, like before we get off of Bond, I do want to talk a little bit about like the future of Bond, because the appeal of Bond has always been that hyper masculine dude who is pretty much the ideal, like what every dude aspires to be. I don't know if that's what guys still aspire to be, but that's but I mean,
I do.
I mean, I think most dudes maybe wouldn't admit it, but that is kind of like what they want. And so, but that's like not okay anymore, which means you need to figure out how does Bond fit into like this new sense of masculinity that we have defined now. It doesn't even work anymore. So like, is James Bond really going to be like, I'm curious how they're going to move forward with James Bond.
Yeah.
Because I don't see how it could be successful without you're basically losing what was appealing to James Bond for a lot of men and probably a lot of women too.
Right. What
have to change
about
what he
the
was.
character originally needs to be removed for it to be updated.
And he was supposed to be, by the way, like he barely had like a deep personality in most of the old movies.
That's what I thought.
Like you really never got under the surface of him. He was like his like really his appeal was the fact that he was just a badass.
Yeah.
He's just a badass. He slept with like the most beautiful women. He kicked he kicked ass everywhere. He had all these sick things.
Yeah.
And you never really cared about his backstory. Now I think they got more into it in this franchise. I don't think that was necessarily a bad thing.
Yeah.
But like that's where we're coming from. And so we're diverging from that, which means the more we diverge, what really is the future appeal of Bond anymore?
Yeah. I think the Kingsman series is like a great replacement, right?
Yeah.
I think that's like
Totally
how
agree.
do you update it?
Totally agreed.
But yeah, didn't you say like Amazon is just like spending money on this shit because it's like an ego play?
So, yeah.
They don't even care. Like they're just like tossing billions of dollars.
Well,
into
Amazon
content.
Prime arguably might have been to help improve Jeff's sex life. Don't quote me on that, but there is a quote from an Amazon executive that kind of hints at that. But
Jeff B.
Getting
it.
I mean, they're going to be in a very good position from a content perspective because, like, David Zaslav, who's going to be the new head of the like Warner Media Discovery.
Yeah.
He was basically like, what's great, and actually Netflix has said something to like too, is like, what's great is our focus is singularly going to be in content. We're not in any other business. We're not in broadband. We're not in cable. And that is good. But then he said, we're also not going to be in cloud, so we're not going to have to worry about that. I'm like, well, I mean, having Amazon Web Services actually helps you make the streaming platform because you have all this ancillary revenue that's crushing it, which means you can go for a loss and outprice your competitors for as long as you want.
100% what they're doing.
And destroy them.
Yeah, they're robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, maybe their focus isn't singular, but Amazon is so big they can use supplementary revenue to help fund other stuff. So that's a good thing.
Well, their whole strategy for the studios is that it's a customer retention tool. Right? It just keeps people on Prime Video.
Right.
Like, it just fits in their model, right? Like, they want to be the e-commerce platform for everything, and content is like a widget to them.
Right. Yeah, of course.
That's it.
And honestly, I would be surprised if they end up getting more serious. And when I say more serious, I mean like they're actually going to try to actually dominate, like actually start pumping out an insane amount of content, get more splashy shows. I could see them buying a movie theater chain and totally revolutionizing the movie theater, which honestly I think would be great for movie theaters and movie going generally.
I agree.
I think that'd be great. I think
agree.
they do a good job changing that.
Dude, if they can do like Amazon brick and mortar like theaters, I'd be down.
I think they could totally change it. You could pay it all on your phone. You can get Amazon points for it.
Heard it here first.
So
if they just end up doing it, we're gonna have to get the lawyers involved.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. It stole our idea. But anyway, I mean, then you might get into monopoly. You might honestly.
Come on, they're already
the justice system might. I don't know. They did get rid of that.
How many different
Paramount
ways that
degree.
they're already like monopolies? I think like
That's a good point.
It's now I think generally agreed
Can anyone
that nobody
stop them?
Yeah, nobody cares. They could just continue to
Honestly.
dominate every field that they want to get into.
Yeah,
it doesn't really matter. As long as Jeff B's getting whatever he wants.
Seriously.
Yeah.
But so the big thing I do want to talk about with Amazon is their strategy. So a lot of people were speculating whether Amazon was going to buy anything. I mean, they could have bought Lionsgate and MGM were like the big someone's
Easy
probably
targets.
going to buy them.
Yeah.
And honestly, the executives at MGM, Lionsgate, let's be real here, are probably sitting around twiddling their thumbs, being like, all right, who's gonna freaking buy us at this point? Like, come on.
Yeah.
They're
I feel like they were just waiting until someone was gonna offer $1 billion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh
pretty
yeah.
much.
No, I think MGM was asking a ridiculous price, and Amazon was like,
Yeah.
I mean, we could pay it, obviously, but we're not going to because you're overvaluing the crap out of yourselves.
Yeah.
But the reason that Amazon gave for buying MGM, this kind of goes back to what we were talking about with James Bond, is the big thing is it's a deep, vast catalog of much beloved intellectual property. And so that poses two questions that I want to talk about. The first is, let's go through the MGM intellectual property and see what do they have? Because
yeah.
like, do they have? I mean, they have like Gone with the Wind. Okay, like I'd be curious what intellectual property they have that's so valuable, especially compared to Lionsgate that has like the Hunger Games. And then second, and we can talk about it at this point, but I just want to say the second part is this trend that studios have to own intellectual property so they can create derivatives of it. We can talk about like the actual, like, is that a good strategy or not? Because we see a lot of audiences being like, dude, they came out with fucking like Disney's like, okay, Home Alone reboot. And it's so funny because you see that and you're like, oh my gosh. And you look at the comments on like Instagram and everyone's like, what the flying, like, stop.
Who asked for this?
It's like, who asked for this? Don't ruin this, please, for the love of God. I see Hollywood like has no original ideas anymore.
Yeah.
And honestly, I don't blame them. So let's get into that after we go through the intellectual property.
Yeah, well, it says every major movie and TV franchise Amazon acquired from MGM. So the first one,
perfect.
James Bond, obviously.
So that's a big one,
I think,
which they don't have full like actual creative control over. So
I think there's some, yeah, they don't have creative control over it. They just bought the IP.
And again, like, what's James Bond in the 21st century in this new culture of like social justice?
So
it's probably pretty limited, honestly.
I don't know what this means, but The Handmaid's Tale. I knew it was an MGM property, but so they're acquiring the property, and so I would assume they're gonna get the licensing rights at some point away from Hulu, right?
Well, they license to Hulu, so they produce. I'm pretty sure they produce the show. Like they actually create it, and then they license it to Hulu.
Okay, so
because they don't have a streaming platform,
so they're just owning the IP. So they're receiving the licensing now.
They basically created it, and then they say Netflix, like Hulu, you can own this basically.
To the regular person, Handmaid's Tale is still a Hulu show. So
yeah.
I don't know what value it is to Amazon.
It's the same as like Ted Lasso is technically a Warner Brothers show,
right?
But it goes on Apple TV Plus, so it's both. That's the deal.
There's some interesting ones. Fargo, Stargate. I used to watch Stargate. Rocky, all the Rocky movies.
That's a big one.
Yeah. Legally Blonde, valuable.
I mean, it is kind of a cultural thing, but like spin-off. I don't know.
Vikings, and they have a
That's
spin-off
a show
series.
I've always wanted to watch.
Oh, you haven't seen it?
I've never seen it.
Oh, dude, it's
no,
good.
It's my people.
Yeah,
I kind of want to see it.
It's good. The main actor, like, or for the first 4 seasons, that plays Ragnar, like the main Viking dude.
Yeah,
good actor.
I've heard it's a very good show, and it was
He's
like
Aussie.
on like History or something channel.
It's a History Channel show.
That's nuts. That's awesome. I love that. I love that for History Channel.
Pink Panther, Signs of the Lambs, RoboCop. That's pretty much it.
I mean, those are like good intellectual properties. Just like, what can they do? It's like one of those
$1 billion
things where it's like,
though.
Yeah. Well, so
billion.
It's so that's a lot of money. Although honestly, I think MGM was looking for like $5 billion. So like Amazon brought them down like a good amount, which is good. They're merging in a deal with the acquiring the Storied Studio for $8.45 billion.
Oh, it was $9 billion. I'm sorry, I've been saying $1 billion this whole time.
Yeah, I was like, that's
$9 billion. Yeah.
$9
You're right.
Which is obviously a lot of money. In the grand scheme of Netflix, it's not. I mean, Amazon, it's like, doop.
Yeah,
it's like Jeff just reaching in his back pocket, being like, all right.
Yeah, chump change for Mr. Bezos.
Yeah, but yeah, how much is this really going to help benefit Amazon?
Honestly,
I don't really know.
I want to see like whatever banker or consulting company went out and like did the valuation for all the IP and like broke it out to 8.45 billion. I want to see that.
It honestly, it's so funny because like we always and executives always say it's like this is all backed by data, but eventually it's just a gut feeling. Like eventually these decisions are really just, I mean, obviously the valuation and negotiation comes from data, but like the decision to buy MGM comes from an executive being like, this is my thesis.
Yeah.
And so we need to prove my thesis, which their
valuations
thesis
are based on assumptions, and the assumptions are based on data.
Right.
And the data can be whatever they want it to be.
Yeah, and they can manipulate the data to tell whatever story they want.
Yeah, exactly.
So their thesis for this is that intellectual property is more important than ever before in a vast wasteland of content. What is able to get out like is basically stuff that people already know. So if we can create a Pink Panther reboot or a Pink Panther sequel of some kind, like people will be like, "Oh, I love Pink Panther," and they'll go and see it. That's the kind of play. They're like, that's literally all it is. It's like they have a lot of intellectual property, and we want to use that intellectual property to create more stuff.
Yeah.
And also formulated by UCLA Anderson's own Mike Hopkins.
That's right.
That's right.
So the another interesting question, like someone asked yesterday, was like, is it easier for a tech company to be successful by acquiring content, or for a content or media company to be successful by acquiring technology talent?
That's a great question.
What do you think?
Honestly, so it's a really good question. Before, like maybe 2 or 3 years ago, I would have said that it's a lot harder for like an entertainment media company to create tech. Like Disney had to buy BAM Tech to like even get their platform like kind of remote.
Yeah.
HBO Max is already sucks
people.
ass.
Yeah.
It's really difficult to like create the distribution stream from the ground up. But it's tough because Netflix has had a lot of like a hard time like creating, like you see like the difference in hit rate between HBO Max, you know, who's been in the industry and has a good rep with talent and understands how to deal with the agencies and you know, and basically produce content. You can see their hit rate being a lot better than Amazon and Netflix.
Yeah.
So they'll probably learn how to do it better. I think Netflix will get probably better at it with experience, not with data, with experience.
They're buying experience with money though. So I think I was on the camp of like it's easier for the tech companies again to drop in basically by purchasing talent.
Yeah,
and that's what they're doing.
Yeah,
and like there's some I feel like there's some evidence to show that like that's a winning strategy versus the shitty other products that we're seeing out by some of the media companies.
Yeah, but to the point that we were mentioning a few weeks ago, like I've been frustrated with the HBO Max app, but it's never convinced me to not watch the show I'm looking for because it's annoying to find.
Yeah, I guess the content is still
king.
Yeah.
So in that vein, like if Netflix, it's very easy to forget because of Squid Game that like before Squid Game, like I wasn't on Netflix for like at least 3 or 4 months.
Oh yeah.
Because I felt like they had nothing that I wanted to watch.
You're right. I hadn't even opened the app for like months.
Right, and that's because it's not. Well, I think it was a combo. They had less like volume because of like production delays with COVID, but it was also because they had nothing splashy and like that people were really talking about.
Yeah.
And
how
I think that has to
fortuitous
do.
Timing.
Yeah, I think that has to do with them not being as good at creating and manufacturing quality content and storytelling than they think. Like that's the one thing. There's a good Reed Hastings quote where he's basically like, we have a ways to go towards creating like the big franchises like the Hunger Games and Harry Potter and Star Wars. Like we're not at that level yet. We don't really know how. Like we don't have that Hollywood experience yet.
Yeah.
So they're bringing people in for sure, and that helps. But to a certain extent, like there's something to be said about the way the studios run and how they've run. It's produced the magic quality that you feel in movies. It's tough to explain, but like
you can't explain.
It's the magic, right? Like it's the magic you feel in movies. Like they're creating quote unquote good content, but you're not getting the fuzzies that you get with some of the studio content.
I wonder what Reed thinks about the whole Dave Chapelle thing.
Well, to your point, I think Reed's like,
Reed's just like,
I think he's fucking done. I honestly,
he's just sailed off into
to
the
your
sunset
point,
with his millions. It's just like, whatever.
Dude, now that you said that, I'm seeing it more and more. I'm like, I haven't heard from Reed in a while, and he did his book tour, which Bob did before he quit. Reed's just doing the Bob thing. He's just like, I'm gonna write the book. I'm gonna like watch this. I'm gonna give CEO to Ted.
He did one better,
and I'm fucking dipping. Like he sees this like controversy. He's like, fuck that shit, man. I'm fucking out. I dealt with the BLM thing like last summer. I dealt with that like and navigated that like landmine. I'm not dealing with this.
Yeah. Bob Iger's one was more like, okay, here's my autobiography. I'm out. But Ted Sarandos was not Ted. Reed's was like, here's my autobiography. Also, it's a way for people to build better organizations because it worked at Netflix. And then I'm out.
Yeah.
So he got a little preachy with it and then left.
And I will tell you, in terms of like the content thing, in terms of like an entertainment company creating tech versus a tech creating content, in terms of like the difference in mentality there, I didn't read the Reed book because I don't think it's going to be that helpful to me, to be honest, is you can see the difference in subject compared to Bob, compared to Reed.
Yeah.
Bob's was very much like, what's really important, it's about relationships, it's about giving creativity space to grow while also nurturing them, like also
growth, mentorship, all that kind of stuff.
Like it was a lot more fuzzy, like understanding business strategy based on intuition, by understanding the big picture, by empowering others, versus Reed's, it seemed like more like, these are the goals, these are the objectives, here's the difference in culture that you have to create.
It was more of
like a tech-oriented
it was a social study type thing on like organizations and how you should structure an organization, like what policies you should or should not remove, how do you encourage people to be more responsible. It was like more of a how-to.
Right.
It was more of a how-to of like building a successful tech company than it was like an autobiography. And I thought it was an autobiography, so I went in completely expecting something else.
Yeah. And I will say like that also, it's the mentality, like let's remember that like I don't think necessarily Reed is like a lover of storytelling like Ted is. I think he brought in Ted because Ted actually is in love with storytelling and loves entertaining people through storytelling, and I think Bob Iger feels that way too. Reed just saw a good investment opportunity.
He's just a tech he's a tech dude.
I think he just saw an opportunity in the market with video distribution. He's like, I'm gonna abuse the crap out of this. He saw a market opportunity, which is what every tech mogul does. That's what Jeff did. He's like, people can be delivered on books. E-commerce is gonna be a big thing. Reed was basically like, why are people paying late fees, going to Blockbuster? This is inconvenient. We can do this better. And so Reed wasn't out of a love for like storytelling.
The next thing, I'll let you know, a little secret, is
NFTs,
baby.
Dude, I don't know, man. I've wanted to invest in NFTs, but it feels like a crapshoot. I mean, to be fair, like I wish I had kept my Bitcoin that I had like 4 years ago really badly. Sold it at a profit, but could have been a lot more of a profit. But I feel like I definitely need some kind of an exposure there. All right, but before we go, so what is your thought on this intellectual property thing? Because it really pisses me off. Because
you mean the Amazon IP thing or what?
Well, it's not even just Amazon. It's every company does this. Like a lot of these companies now, because the marketplace is so saturated, there is a heavy emphasis, and it's not all their content, obviously, right? There's still a lot of new content being created. But it seems like a lot of these companies are like, how we break into the cultural zeitgeist? Let's spin off all this intellectual property that we had. So like Nickelodeon, for instance, is like rebooting Rugrats. Like, so all these companies are getting into this way where they're basically going in and saying, what intellectual property do we own? Oh, we own Terminator. Let's make a new Terminator that nobody asked for. Or let's remake Ghostbusters for the 500th time. Let's just do that. They keep creating these remakes to get people's attention, and it's just like, it's bad content. It has to be, because it can't be original. It can be a spin-off.
What I'll say is,
but
this whole business is, you can approach it two ways. One as an art and one as a business.
Yeah.
And it's both. But I think as we've gotten to appreciate it more, we're like looking more towards as like a creative art, but most of it is going to be business.
Yeah,
Otherwise you're just like any other starving artist, right? Like
I know.
well, that's just how it is, man.
I know. Well, I think it's the structure of the business. Like, it has to do with the fact that entertainment companies really aren't entertainment companies anymore. Like, they're not really studios. They're just tech companies that have studios within them, which means that the decisions they're going to make are going to be more data driven.
Yeah.
And that's not great for creativity. And it's also an environment where it's difficult for like a truly original stuff to come out. Like, I think about this a lot, is like, if Rocky came out today, would it hit?
No.
Like, would it be as good? I don't know, actually. I really don't know, because a part of me is like, no. Like, I don't think it would really break out. But at the same time, it's a really resonating film. Like, there is something different about it. Like, it's a combination. Like, yes, the environment is not as perfect enough to, like, you know, for that to necessarily break through, just because there's so much crap out there now.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, it was such a unique project where, like, Sylvester Stallone wrote the whole thing himself.
Yeah.
And then he starred in it.
I don't know.
Himself.
I watched,
and it's like it's very magical. Like, I don't know, there's some magical element to it.
I watched Rocky 4. I started with that.
Russian one?
Yeah, Ivan.
You started
Ivan
with that
Drago.
one?
If he dies, he dies.
If he died,
Yeah, I started with that when I was like 10, and then I worked my way back, and I still liked it.
Interesting.
So I mean, I think there are some movies that are just timeless. That's one of them.
Yeah.
But whether like you're gonna get like 17, 18-year-old TikTokers watching it,
I don't know. I do worry a lot that, like, TikTokers and younger generations just don't have the patience to really appreciate good movies anymore, because they just
yeah.
like,
no,
it's
I
really
agree.
hard.
I agree.
It's
Like,
really
you have
hard.
to capture someone's attention for 2 hours.
Dude, I mean, if I'm having trouble, like, I'll be like trying to watch a movie.
Yeah.
And like an hour in, my phone's just sitting there. I'm like,
Yeah.
don't pick it up.
I'm one of those
pick it
guys,
up.
though, that, like, if I'm sitting in a movie theater and someone picks up their phone, I'm going to yell at them.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's the beauty of movie
My biggest
theaters.
pet peeve is when I'm trying to watch something and I'm trying to get my wife to watch something that I really want her to watch, and she pulls
it's
out
the
her phone.
worst.
I'm like, dude, just
Either
focus.
she pulls out her phone or she falls asleep, and you're like, what's the point?
Yeah. I get so mad.
What's the point?
Yeah.
But it's honestly, if I'm having trouble, and this is why I don't think theaters will ever die, and if they do die, that's going to be really bad for movies and television generally.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's bad for Netflix, because, like, that's the only place where I can watch a movie and I'm not tempted in the slightest bit to pick up my phone. I don't know how some people are, because it's like a huge, like, breaks your face when you, like, turn it on in a dark theater.
Yeah.
But, like, I am so engrossed in it. Versus if I'm sitting on my couch, I'm just not as engrossed in it nearly at the level. Even if I don't check my phone, it's still like I'm still in my living room.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like if I'm in a movie theater, I'm like transported.
Yeah.
Versus if I'm in my living room, I'm like, sorry, if I'm in a movie theater, I'm transported. If I'm in my living room, it's just like it's become content. It's not a movie. It's content now.
Yeah. The only way to fix that is to upgrade your home system to be a theater on your own.
Oh yeah.
And then you'll focus.
Honestly, I've thought about this. When I become a parent and when I become rich,
Yeah.
I'm absolutely setting up like a home movie theater, and I'm gonna have a little bucket, like not a bucket, like a bowl, like right when you enter the movie theater, you need to put your phone there, and you can't. Like, that's the only way I've ever been able to focus on movies now. Honestly, fully all the way through, I put my phone like right
Leave it
here,
away.
and then I like go to the couch, and I put my phone here. I'm like, because even if it's like, and I love movies, like, and I still find it really hard to focus on like a movie or TV show for longer than 2 hours without checking my phone.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that
It's
that is
so
the
hard.
thing, it makes it.
It's addicting. I mean, the phone is literally addicting. So you're actually fending off an addiction in order to pay attention to a movie.
Well, we have our life goals then.
Yeah, exactly. Well, what's your life goal?
No, that's it. Have a private theater. Yeah.
Private theater, man. Private theater. But I need that.
One
bucket.
can dream. One can dream.
I know. All right.
With that,
recommendations? Anything you're watching?
I mean, the only thing I watched was the Dave Chapelle special, so just go watch it. It's on Netflix.
Fair enough.
Yeah. What about you? You watch anything?
You're
still on Ted Lasso, right?
Still on Ted Lasso. Still watching The Morning Show, which has been okay this season. Hasn't been amazing.
Mm-hmm.
Have you watched the morning show at all?
Not yet.
It's interesting. There's like
Steve Carell's in that one.
Yeah, I honestly I loved the first season. The second season I'm very like kind of iffy on, mainly for two reasons. I think it's first it was that they're like really they're in this pretend land where people care about cable news anymore. Like they're some of the one of the main characters makes an appearance on the show and they're like, oh, Twitter's blowing up, like everyone's talking about Alex Levy, and it's just like,
yeah, that doesn't happen
if
anymore.
If like some old anchor from like CNN came on CNN, nobody would give a fuck. So why are we pretending we live in a world where like this would ever matter? First of all, they're like, oh, Trump said something, but that was second to Alex Levy. I'm like, dude, no, are you kidding me? I'm sorry, we live in.
You're not bought in. You're not bought in.
Yeah, so like you're taking me out of it because I'm like, why are we pretending like anybody gives a crap about cable news anymore?
Yeah,
legitimately. And then the second thing is like I hate a lot of the characters. To your point, like there's some characters that like literally are in jobs that I'm like, why are you in this job? Like there's one character who's the president of the news organization and goes and like always shits on her boss in front of him. And he like gets mad at her a little bit, but he's like, you're damn good at your job. And then it's like, dude, if I was you, I would have fucking fired her like 5 seconds, like in like 5 seconds.
All right, so
she's just a bitch, like the whole show.
So you hate these 2 seasons. Do you recommend it?
I don't know. I loved the first season, so and I'm still gonna watch the rest. I'm hoping it's better, you know.
Sunk cost fallacy.
But it is interesting, like how, like, why I'm starting to hate them now versus season 1. Also, why like. Because in Succession, I kind of hate them all, too.
Yeah. Oh, I hate everyone in Succession.
But I also kind of like them. I don't know. They're weird. They're very odd. Like, I hate them, but I love them at the same time.
All right. I'm going to add that one to my list. Morning Show.
Morning Show, I think, is... I mean, honestly, Apple has
at least
a lot of
season
good
1.
Stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, at least season 1. And then, Ted Lasso. Finished Dave. Dave's a weird show.
Oh, the FX?
FX, Hulu, yeah. But yeah.
All right.
That's kind of it. All right, guys. Well, thanks for tuning in. That was episode 5. See you next week.
Next week, baby.
Peace.
Later.